All right, we are live. Happy Friday, everybody. Coming back again for another week of Bioactive Live Q&A. This week we have, as usual, Brian from Rubber Ducky Isopods, Kevin from OK Calyx and OK Calyx Genetics, and this week special we have Ross from HyphaGrown. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah.
Excited to
So
be here.
So the reason we're here is, the primary goal of this show is to connect with the community, get some questions going. Ross brings a kind of a unique angle. HyphaGrown has been running a commercial no-till outfit now for several years successfully. I've personally tried the meds that they grow. They're fantastic. I think that, a lot of the people that tune in here grow no-till, grow organically, are into biodiverse soil systems and stuff like that. But the unique aspect that you bring to this is that you're operating in the actual legal market, the medical, recreational legal market here in Michigan, following regenerative practices, following no-till principles over a long period of time. So that's really a unique perspective that you bring here that, hopefully people take advantage of. With some questions, and if not, we definitely have some questions for you too, just so we can catch up with what's going on over there.
Sounds
Um,
good.
yeah, so I guess just to get started, we'd like to run through just a quick catch up with everybody, and I guess let's start with you, Ross. Since last time we spoke was probably this time last year, and I think since then you guys have jumped into your own genetics and pheno hunting and stuff like that. Maybe kick us off there and let us know what's going on, what's new.
Yeah, I guess we kind of Alexa and Losha mostly have been starting to do a little bit of breeding with some selections that we've made, diff- different things that we've pulled throughout the years that we've liked, and I mean, we really haven't ran anything yet. We've pulled some F1s and stuff like that and done some tent hunts and kind of like looked through some things. Definitely haven't done any line work. Probably not going to be dropping any Hypha seeds or Hypha genetics anytime soon by any means, but it's always fun to have your side projects. And I mean, there's quite a bit of beans have been created and there's a lot to look at. So hopefully, with spring right around the corner, we can get some stuff outside and get some stuff into some friends' hands and see if there's anything worthwhile there. Other than that, I guess just been plucking along at work, month by month, harvest by harvest, working into some different genetics. We got a couple things from Rising Moon in there. We've got a couple things from Regenerative coming up. We got a couple things from Farming Stone 2.0, Mad Max. So yeah, we're looking to turn over the menu. We usually do spring and summer, so it's been busy getting ready for 420 and all, and taxes, annual financial statements, that good stuff just got wrapped up. So it's like, yeah, we're ready for spring and summer here, man.
So the genetics that you guys are playing with right now is the goal is probably not for HyphaGrown to jump into the genetics game per se. Is the goal really for you guys just to get some in-house kind of bred, cool, awesome buds that you can market yourselves, basically?
Exactly. It's just something that we have the ability to do, and while we're at it, anything that we can do to differentiate ourselves in the market or stick out, that's great. It's a pretty competitive market here in Michigan. There's a lot of options for people to explore, both, caregivers. I mean, there's just a lot of weed here. There's a lot of hash here. There's a lot of everything here. People expect quality wherever you go. They're pretty well educated and continuing to be better educated. So it's like, it sets the bar high. I mean, you can get some pretty decent stuff for a pretty, what we would call cheap 10 years ago. So it's cool to see how everything has progressed, and genetics are getting better, hash is getting better, everything's getting better, yields are getting better. Flavor profiles are getting more unique. It's kind of cool. Things are cooking here in Michigan.
Yeah, no doubt. And the place that I see Ross and Zach and Losha and Alexa, which is the core of, that's the four people that run HyphaGrown. And if you check them out on Instagram, they have a very unique operation with their vertical grow systems. They have 4x8 beds that are stacked 2 or 3 high. I can't remember. Some rooms are probably different, 2 high. Um, and they're maximizing their space, their footprint with that. And the place that I see these guys the most is like regenerative conferences. Camp Compost is one of them. It's 3 days of really tapping into regenerative practices and learning from people in our community. And then places like Sungrown. So, and not only seeing you guys there, but you're also sponsors of these operations. So it's kind of the proof in the pudding that the emphasis is more than just on growing chronic ass organic weed. It's more about the regenerative, reusing things, reutilizing waste product instead of tossing it in the trash like every other operation. And we talk about it a lot. There's just the feels go along with that, which lends itself to the experience and everything else. So, what are the ways that you guys? Because I know that there's a handful of things that you do, but what are some of those ways that you guys try to minimize your footprint and maximize kind of what you have to use?
That's a great question. So, I mean, realistically, we're farming indoors in northern Michigan. Not the most sustainable thing to begin with. We run all LEDs, I guess. That can help on our power bill. All of our wastewater, so our condensate from our HVAC systems and the dehumidifiers in the room, we plumb all that to a 275 cube. And then we run that through a carbon and sediment filter and then through a UV light where we can remineralize that water and we can recapture 75, 80%. So we keep the city water plant, from having to do that. And then it keeps our water bill down. Pretty much all the cover crop, or it stays for the most part. The dichondra stays, but like the companion plants, like the marigolds will seed, the buckwheat will seed. Maybe not enough to complete the room, but it cuts down on how much seed we have to buy. The lemon balm stays forever. The Tulsi stays. The Tulsi seeds really well. Different things like that. The basil just sticks around. Cilantro, you have to kind of get those little seeds back in there if you want to do any of those cilantros or dills, but sometimes it just depends where they are in the bed. But I guess, so we don't buy any fertilizers like, Mark. Pretty much everything gets put into a thermophilic pile after harvest, minus like root stocks. And like the big parts of the stalks, we'll just throw those through the wood chipper and make some wood chips. And then after the thermophilic, we'll let the worms have at it and age it out in the loading bay. We can't really make enough compost for what we're doing, so we'll have to go to the good guys at Wormies and get some more. But for the most part, we're able to recycle all of the foliage that we would take off, doing cleanups during harvest, fan leaf stock, everything, root mass. So I guess, and then back to the energy efficient equipment, there's really not much you can do with HVAC equipment and stuff. You can just buy what's new. But I guess keeping as much organic matter out of the landfill, that's what we like to do. It's like in Michigan here, there's some, so you can't just throw away fan leaves. You'd actually have to mix them 50-50 with like cardboard or dirt and then dump them in a dumpster and then they can be picked up. So that's really not an option. That's what our neighbors do. That's what they do with rock wool. That's what they do with vape carts. So it's trying to show people that there's just different SOPs for at least organic waste. And like, there is no system. There's no commercial compost facilities that are licensed to pick up cannabis waste and then compost it. So like, we're in a weird spot here with that. Either you do it on site, on camera, or you can't do it. You can't sell it. So it's like a lot of people don't use compost or different grades of compost as a natural plant fertilizer. So it's just like there's no talk about it in the industry, you know? It's like whenever we bring it up or if we get put on a committee or the newspaper picked it up a year or two ago, it's like every now and again it comes around, but we're pretty much one of the only people doing that. I know of a few other grows that are popped up in the last 2 years that are doing soil beds, and it's cool to see it grow and progress like that. And more, at least on the commercial level, 3 no-till grows popping up in a year is a lot in one state. So I guess between all those things, that's more or less the best we can pull it in a warehouse up here.
That's like synonymous with what we do and what we're about. Kind of one aspect of this show is using everything that you possibly can. So it's an interesting concept, and another example of people that can use the inputs that are made by others, where you don't necessarily have the footprint to do it. Like you're saying, you need wormies. You don't have enough waste product. Granted, you don't throw anything away. You just don't have enough to run at a full scale like that. So having people that have that land that can do those things for you, that are processing it in the safe ways, kind of the ways that Kevin shows you, where you're not adding anything crazy to these piles, you're not doing anything other than utilizing nature. That's exactly what you guys are doing with your static piles. That's essentially what Alexa does by studying microbiology and tries to steer your operation that way. But so the regenerative side, I feel like it's good for people to see that it is possible at a commercial level to not lose your roots in this thing, right? Even if your plan is to be the biggest, baddest grower in the land, you can still scale this thing up. Might need some friends, and you're probably gonna run into some issues as well, which is where you guys are light years ahead with that. But definitely something that connects with this group of people.
Hey, can I ask a question real quick? Do you use all that compost and stuff you're making to refill your beds or to top dress it a little bit, or how do you go about reusing it?
So a lot of that compost will go back in the beds. A lot of it will get put into extracts or teas. Different, JLFs or OHNs will go in there. It just depends. We buy humate fertilizers from Bokashi, Earthworks and stuff like that. If we need to supplement soluble nutrients or different things like that, we do have to be kind of careful and run a lot of R&D tests. With the microbial testing is pretty strict in Michigan. But yeah, we like to get all that stuff in there in due course, especially with veg plants and plants earlier along in bloom, even foliar applications and stuff. It's like with organic Alexa being there and having the ability to scope different things and be doing that all day on site and doing biological soil samples and like managing our paste tests and all of our chemistry and stuff like that, and even down to soil physics, making sure that sand silts and clays and like the cation exchange capacities in the beds. It's a lot of work to have this, we call it living soil, but in our system, we never give it a break. We're constantly re-inoculating it to keep it at peak performance. So it's like there is no soil like this on the planet. What we're doing in there is natural as possible, but at the same time, I mean, we got a lot of life going on. They're cruising and making sure that the mineral availability and the biological thing and the whole chemistry thing are always in balance. That's a big job for her, and we're lucky to have her there doing it.
So she's basically testing your soil constantly for you.
It also sounds like I mean, she would probably be able to comment better on it, but
Sure.
it seems like maximizing your use of that super rich, super good homemade compost is what you're trying to do essentially, and that's probably what you use that information towards is like, hey, should we use this for extracts? Should we use this for, are we looking what kind of microbiology are we looking to steer this soil with right now? What's lacking maybe?
Exactly. What's lacking? Do we need to go protozoa? Do we need nematodes? Do we need, amoeba? What's in there? What shouldn't be in there? All that. Yeah, it's nice to be able to have someone monitoring that kind of on a daily basis, even bed by bed, like you said. Each one of those soil beds is got quite a bit of soil in it, and taking readings from different spots, it shaking vials it gets old.
Yep.
But yeah, keeping those beds um, up to par and on that peak performance level, like we don't, in between flips, we take a harvest down and there's a 2-day turnaround, with a deep clean, a heat treatment, a lot of H2O2 and floor mopping and wall wiping with microfibers and little alcohol squirters. I mean, the whole 9 yards, air sprayers to clean off light heat sinks, everything, whatever we can get our hands on, or a sprayer or anything. We kind of get it done as best we can in those 2 days, and then we transplant right back in the beds. And then again, you're in with your compost early in the transplant cycle before the resin has produced, and then you're switching to liquid feeds week 2 as soon as you start getting bud sites and you're done with your foliars, and on through that whole thing trying to keep microbes back off the buds. So yeah, it's definitely a wild ride each harvest.
I wanted to pick your brain for a minute, Ross. Part of your team, you guys are behind some pretty well-known events throughout the country. Camp Compost, you guys have been around for a long time using wormies, so dialed in with this kind of stuff. What is the secret sauce for your compost? Like, are you just going diversity? Do you feel like there's 1 or 2 things that you could share with this newer audience? More of this, people who are going to take some of this information from this channel and use it on a much smaller scale, a microcosm of what probably you're used to running, but they want to see it obviously working in real time. And so that's why we appreciate you coming on the shows, because I don't know anything harder than to grow really good cannabis perpetual indoors, especially in the middle of winter where you live.
So I guess thank you, Brian. And like for the composting, it's like we're using fan leaves and ganja stock because that's what we have. You can use anything. If you're in an apartment and you got a 5-gallon bucket with a lid, you can save all your food scraps. That's how you start a worm bin, and kind of get that going. But I guess what we're doing basically is we're running those thermophilic piles with all the ganja biomass just to make sure we're getting up to temperature. So if there is any pathogens, like if there's some fusarium or anything really, we just get it up to temp and then we can start the curing process. But today we were looking at a 9-month aged pile, and you've got quite a different diversity in that compared to a 4-month pile. They'd be used for different things, but I guess to get back to your question, Brian, with the special sauce, there's different things that you can use to build compost piles if you have all sorts of resources available to you. If you're using alfalfa or hay, or if you've got comfrey, if you've got some serious foliage to work with in the summertime, depending on where you're at, you can make some pretty ripping piles. For us, it's a lot of food scraps and ganja stuff. We can bring food scraps from home to get those piles going. We can bring in some FAAs. We could do, we can bring some hydrolysates in pretty much. I mean, if you want a real good answer, you'll have to talk to Alexa about it. That's right up her alley and what she's doing. And all those piles out there are in various states basically managed by her. She'll say, I need a wheelbarrow from this one, or, let's haul some of this over here. But for the most part, food scraps and ganja waste are what we're using at work.
which are
How are you
things.
getting those piles, or is there a temperature you're trying to keep them at?
I guess we want to at least get them above 130, but we usually hold them around 160 to 170 for, I don't know, 3-4 days, and then get another turn in it. And we just have them on individual pallets with chicken wire caged up. So it's, they're not too big. Each one's kind of manageable with a pitchfork, and they'll get rebuilt right there in the loading bay or outside if it's not covered in snow.
Well, and you can move it around in a factory setting, which is why
The forklift.
which is why it's kind of crucial you're putting it on a pallet and keeping it in a wire rack kind of system. That's interesting to conceptualize, doing all of that on the back of a loading dock.
There's a interesting question I'd love to actually hear from these guys. Like, how do you, if you potentially had something, can you see that question there, Ross?
Yeah, keep cannabis leaves out of the compost for the viroid. So like, we know we don't have any HLVD because we test everything for it. We don't really bring cuts in either. Not that it can't be transferred through seeds, and there's still a lot to learn about it, but we do regular tests for it. And like, I guess the thing, I like all the leaves in the compost. I feel like they have the plant hormones, and if they aren't heavily diseased by any means, I mean, I guess I haven't seen any problems keeping the leaves in the compost. I guess if I had sick leaves, I would definitely not include those in my compost if I knew for a fact that there was a plant and I could isolate it in the facility. But I mean, we got to be pretty careful. I mean, if you're bringing a plant into the facility with viroid, you already messed up. You should have been going through one of the houses, or somebody should have seen that long ago. It should have gotten tested elsewhere, type thing. That is something that maybe some other commercial facilities aren't so good about, when you got to buy thousands of clones to set up your place. But yeah, we've never seen it pop up in anything that we have. And I guess as far as putting diseased leaves in the compost, it just, I mean, the thermophilic process, you'd think it would take care of it, to be honest.
You guys also use the thermophilic process for another reason too, don't you? One thing I wanted to rediscuss, because I get this question a lot, is gray isopod issues in these long-term beds. And I remember you telling me a while ago that you'll take that top layer off and run it through thermophilic piles to kind of cast out those pests as well. So there's another reason why running a hot pile might be your best option if you're trying to quarantine stuff for like an indoor use, or for like a more controlled indoor organic setting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've for sure done that before. It's just like, it depends. I mean, like the pill bugs can get pretty bad to a point where it's like, depending on, your soil health and what you've got to fight them with. I mean, 2 inches of topsoil might be your best move. I mean, it sure is quick. And yeah, we've had to pull the whole rhizosphere off before, and re-inoculate. But at the end of the day, running that through the thermophilic process, I mean, that might have saved the year, to be honest. Yeah, the pill bugs, they can get overwhelming. It seems like the longer you have them, the more you deal with them, the better you become at coexisting with them. It's like, we're never going to get rid of them in that amount of space, especially in the part of the country that we're in, where they're outside everywhere. But we also, don't have them running up the plants and munching rootstock either. It's like, they're always kind of there, but you got to keep on it. Like, we've put duct tape around the beds. We put sticky stap around the stalks. We get the shop vac out 20 minutes after watering when they're all up on the lips, and come around and just try and, everything, potato tech, avocado tech, just simply removing them in the 5-gallon buckets. I mean, you keep coming at them. And I feel like those Ozark grower guys, like, I know they've been buying some isopods. You see it on the Instagram, and it looks like they've got, I don't know what they've got in there, if they're zebras or pandas, Brian, but like, that's pretty sweet. It looks like it's working pretty well for them. Maybe
they're using using zebra They're Armadillium maculatum, and they're the ones that I was using in the early days when we were joking around. We would release the ladybugs and release the zebras. So it's cool to see people playing around with this kind of stuff. And I was talking to Mark before we all came on here live. It'll be nice to be able to distinguish that all isopods aren't the same. That there are some out there that are worthless, and the ones that you guys are talking about are so worthless that I sell isopods from all over the world, and those I couldn't get. I couldn't give those away. Even kids don't really want them because they're the ones that you find in the backyard. So there's a lot to this, and I think you guys are just on a whole nother level, especially if you can recycle your plant matter. I know in some states you're not allowed to do that kind of stuff. So in my opinion, you're kind of maybe in an outlier moment where you're able to use that kind of stuff and be able to especially use the fan leaves that potentially have the sugar leaf on that. I don't know what, I mean, there's probably a lot of reasons why that goes on that way. But when I was able to use the fan leaves that were kind of taken off with the certain genetics that had the sugar leaves on the fan leaf itself, the rails, I guess is what everybody used to call them. There was just a boost in life when I was using that stuff. And so I just wanted to highlight that. I'm sure you guys are running that kind of stuff. It's just nice to see that more people outside of like Steensland and Cantwell and you guys are starting to understand this and do it on a commercial level.
Yeah, thanks. It seems like, people are definitely getting more and more educated and doing a lot of really cool stuff out there as far as regenerative farming goes and everything in the space, I guess. Sorry, what was that question again, Brian?
It wasn't really it was more of like a comment, because in the early days, there was only like one or two people that were really doing this and sharing it online. And when I first saw them, or at least for me, the first person I saw was a guy named Joshua Steensland. So if you've never heard that name before, you should check that dude out. He's kind of a quieter guy, but he gives out a lot of fantastic information like Kevin does for free. He's just on a different wavelength. He's not necessarily, he's more of a living soil guy focused than not KNF. But that's the point of all of this, is that if you can learn from a bunch of people, you can put together these playbooks. And that's something that it seems like HyphaGrown has been able to figure out, is the playbook on a commercial level with a living soil system, and also using that system on a tiered system. And I saw a few companies try to achieve that. I think we mentioned this before with Alexa and stuff when we've had her on the show, that no company seemed to be able to achieve that, whether it was salt or whether it was like a living soil type or thinking process. When there was a tiered system, the labor never made the second tier worth it. And so that's there's hats off to the crew being able to make that actually worth the growing effort and actually having a yield when it's off the ground like that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was tough to decide to go vertical or not. But it's just like, we're pretty small. So if we didn't, we'd be leaving a lot of wasted space out there. And, being as the four of us are all pretty in tune and had operated our own grows in the past before we had even come together and all of that, it just sort of worked itself out. And when we decided to do the blueprints and build, we just went vertical with it. And it didn't go smooth the whole time. I mean, we were playing games with blue mats for like 6 months back right in like June of 2020. And like, we were having the top beds flood and, oh my God. And, so we pulled those out. We put solenoid valves in to pump water, ran it through a Trollmaster. We've hose watered, hand watered, watering can, pitchered, everything, just dialing in the water in there took 2 years, we kind of got it figured out. We figured out how to not flood everything and get it going, and incorporating more fans and, Vostermans and poultry barn fans and centrifugal fans, all sorts of stuff behind the scenes that you can't really see because they're up against the walls, and getting that airflow right up on that top level. If you can do that and get rid of those microclimates and make sure you don't have huge humidity pockets anywhere, you should be all right. I mean, we don't have massive temperature fluctuations between the soil bed that's 8 feet in the air and the one that's not. So we don't have too warm a soil up there. The drainage is just fine with the trays. There's less foot room, it's harder to work up there. Like Brian was saying, we've got catwalks. They're all stationary. None of the racks move. It's easy to stand up there and work and get around the beds. You still can't get around the end cap that's against the wall, and you've got to reach through it. But, fortunately for us, we've got a lot of people that like what they do quite a bit, and they're showing the plants the love, and we're able to bottom clean and get what we need in and out of there and get that air through. It helps having, Losha in there, who's an HVAC tech and a general contractor, and Zach's a mechanical engineer. So getting all the mechanics figured out in there was a lot of those guys doing a lot of math and work and measuring and making sure we had all the equipment that we needed to get these girls, the attention that they need. And that airflow is huge in a vertical system. I mean, it's huge on a single tiered system, but it's really important when you're stacking beds like that. And you've got all this transpiration and these plants are just raging, and, the room's sealed. So you definitely want your equipment right and your airflow good.
Yeah, it seems like that would be a big challenge to overcome initially, is getting those zones so that all the airflow is constantly moving. You don't have those microclimates. Do you guys have like other recurring issues that you deal with, or is it pretty much humming at this point?
It's farming, man. There's always issues. The stuff that you don't even think about. You think you're looking good, and all of a sudden, a driver goes out in an LED, but it's week 6 bloom and it's all the way up on the top rack. And are you really going to pull it down? And, are you going to run on a spectrum down? There's always minor little things, or, there's that plant. You've got 200 plants in a room, and there's that one plant that just like the bugs seem to go towards it. It doesn't want to uptake. The plant next to it is fine. The other plant next to it is thriving. It's always something. It's like, it's never a perfect harvest, no matter what. Some are better than others, but like the perfect harvest, I haven't seen it yet.
And I know you're not dealing with those fungus gnats because you got those biodiversity packs rocking over there, but you also have like a ridiculous amount of volume and rotating soil stock. So I'm sure that there's always a reintroduction kind of balancing, buffering phase where your beneficial soil organisms kind of have to take back over that volume, maybe jump back on that pest issue a little bit. Yeah, I mean, you guys probably don't even worry about fungus gnats even when you deal with them, because when you're in the know on those and you have the biodiversity that's protecting your soil, from molecular level all the way up to rove beetle size, you don't necessarily have to worry as much about the vector, the pathogens and shit that they provide. So you do have some grace there when you're running organics, that you don't have to worry as much. We have a lot of commercial guys that buy our packs or rove beetles, and they run them in cocoa to prevent against thrips. And I just find, I don't think that I've really had many, I mean, I can probably count on one hand, and it's always outdoors, people that reach out with thrip issues when they're growing in organics. It just is not generally an issue when you have a bustling soil ecosystem, because that's where they start. So shameless shout out to biodiversity packs.
Hey, I got a question, Ross. When you're done with a flower cycle, what's the process after that? Are you drying and curing and taking to dispensaries, or is it frozen for a processor to wash? What do you do with it?
Okay, that's a great question. Thanks. So basically, when we chop and harvest, we typically have the plant structured and cleaned up pretty well to the point where there shouldn't be any crazy amounts of larvae. They're pretty stripped. More or less 85% of what's on that plant will be an A or a B bud, and anything that's not that'll get clipped right on harvest and frozen, within 25 minutes, 30 minutes or so. And that's what we'll use for like hash rosin material. And then everything else, that'll go straight in the curing room. We usually hang for about 19 days, give or take, maybe 1 or 2 either way. We like to hang for 19 days at least if we can. We're pretty low and slow about it. I'll do the first, 56 hours. We'll try and rip out, 60% of the humidity load in that room, get it down to a nice even level, and then we'll hold humidity at 52, reasonably speaking, like right above 50 for the remaining 17 days or so, 16 and a half. And that'll bring us to a really good point for compliance testing. Then we'll trim it, then we'll compliance test it. Then we'll go back in the curing room and we'll finish doing like our burps, and we'll get our humidity up a little bit more. And then it'll get bagged and packaged from there. And then
how much is needed for testing?
They'll take 0.5% of the batch size. So we could do 50-pound batch sizes here. So not too much, reasonably. And then for hash testing, they take 2 grams per batch. So that's pretty reasonable. So like, I guess, 1,000 pounds, you'll give up 5.
Do that. What are so? And this is we obviously don't need to know everything that they test for, but are they testing for things that can actually like hurt you, like powdery mildew and stuff like that, like spore type stuff, microbial stuff that you really don't want to smoke? You and I know we shouldn't smoke.
Yes and no. No, they won't test for like botrytis or powdery mildew. That's not a microbial test. Like that stuff is on shelves. They'll test for aspergillus. They'll test for total yeast and mold. Aspergillus is pass or fail. They PCR that here in Michigan. So it's Pteris, Flavus, Niger, and Fumigatus that they test for. So once you fail for one of those, that triggers a mycotoxin test. Then they'll go in and have a real good look at it and slap you with another bill after you can't sell any of that. But yeah, they're pretty rigorous. And then chemical residue tests, the thresholds are really low, but they allow some pretty wild chemicals to be used, to be honest. I wish I had one of my lists with me here, but there's some stuff that we have in the office at work, and it's pretty, like I said, it's just like what they allow. It's like, okay, well, CDC website says I could breathe up to 10 billion aspergillus spores a day, but I understand there's different things like aspergillosis. You can get mold growing in your lungs. Yeah, they've got some pretty wild stuff what they let through with like chloriferous, or I believe that's how it's said. You can't use that pretty much anywhere. There's a small limit for it in cannabis. EPA outlawed it on, I think in 89 on pretty much every commercial crop. So there's some weird things, if you really look through the chemistry and the rules on what's allowed and what's disallowed, pretty much no microbes, total yeast and mold, the aspergillus covers it all. They kind of group every yeast and mold together, and they don't really give you much of a threshold. I think you're looking at, and then obviously your E. coli, salmonella, all that stuff separate, your heavy metals, your whole chemical residue thing. The COA is probably like 6 pages long for the most part. But yeah, Michigan's got to be one of the strictest. Massachusetts is really strict. I'm not sure what they're doing in Colorado anymore exactly with their compliance, but it's pretty on par. Not sure what they're doing in Oklahoma or California either exactly. I'd have to take a look at. If somebody wanted to share their tests, it'd be cool to see, because different labs do it differently. The state doesn't actually have regulations that tell a test lab how they have to test for a specific pathogen. So that's been a huge problem, between cultivators and test labs and growers, because, it costs a lot of money to run your stuff at the test lab. And if they're just failing you and to get the retest, I don't know. There's a lot of politics in it. And I guess I don't want to get too deep into the test lab politics and how all that works, but
Yeah, understood for sure. Definitely don't want to get you overstating. Kevin,
Are
what?
you
Sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead? Are you then taking your flour to dispensaries and selling it to them? And
Yep.
then what? Okay, and then what do you do with your frozen? What's happening with that? Is it taken to a processor? Or are you guys washing it?
yeah, so right now all the frozen stuff goes to a processor. It all gets moved via arm transport, so we don't take it anywhere. I'll just set up transport. They'll bring it to the processor. Processor will process it. They'll send it back in bulk jars. We'll pack it up ourselves and send it out. And then same thing with flour. We pretty much package all of our own flour. We haven't been having it co-packed. We probably will have to at a certain point in time. It's just too much to pack, but we're usually able to pack it all. And then we can send that out too via arm transport to the dispensaries. So it's basically anybody you know that wants to hit you up or that does. I mean, there's 1,000 dispensaries in Michigan and about 10 million people that live here. So it's like, I mean, they're trucking through weed here pretty good. So I would say for us, sales are steady. Sales are moving pretty smoothly.
As long as the price per pound doesn't keep plummeting, but that's where growing quality and meds, and I'd certainly, much better than I do what the market's like, but I do think that when you grow quality meds that you can maintain a certain floor on the market, because it's not just a saying, it is just better. I mean, there's no ambiguity that it's just a better product. So hopefully that sentiment still rings true. I know that was the case kind of, a couple years ago, but
I mean, as the market matures, and it's like the market's going to do what the market's going to do. It was, here before us, it'll be here after us. It's just, can you carve out a little piece of it and figure it out, while you're here? And like you said, Mark, if you're focused on quality and you're being transparent in your practices and you're being honest with your consumers and, and the product really is good, then it's going to speak for itself. And regardless of what the market does, at least you'll be on the top tier of wherever that is. And hopefully that's enough to keep you going, because sometimes in farming, I mean, it's just like you take losses, big ones. Maybe off a little mistake, maybe off a medium mistake. A big mistake might cost you the whole grow. It might cost the farm. So try not to make those. But yeah, it's yeah.
So we talked about the commercial grow, but I know that pretty much all of you guys live, the regenerative life, and it's February, so it's a little early to be dreaming about what's going to happen outdoors for us. Not like Kevin over there is thinking about, planting outdoors. We still have snow
Today,
potentially.
baby, I started today.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, watching him out in his freaking short sleeves doing yard work. Fuck, dude. Great to see. It's always good to stay connected with people in different zones. But anyways, so do you guys have any plans this growing season? Do you guys do a big garden outdoors together or anything like that?
So we do the work garden, which would be everything that doesn't make it into the houses, So Losha and Alexa got their big house garden, and whatever they overplant goes to the work garden. And then whatever Zach and I overplant ends up at the work garden. But we're usually doing, a lot of cucumbers, tomatoes, tons of hot peppers, squash, beans, peas, as much food as we can get. Hard to do pumpkins and watermelon. I guess I don't have enough space at my place to get them to a really good size. But yeah, everything, the easy stuff is what we grow around the house, the stuff that we can eat right away. I think we got some carrots going. The hot peppers will get planted pretty soon, like the Trinidads and like the super hots, the 7-pot chocolates, the Reapers, the Ghosts, the Scotch bonnets and stuff. We like to get those big here because we got the short season up. But I mean, yeah, nothing too much. I guess we're going through all the seeds now, figuring out that we got more seeds than we need. But We'll see. We got a couple peppers that we've been breeding over the years that it'll be fun to get those out there and start working on some F3s and yeah, just yeah, ready for spring, man. Get out there and get some stuff going.
Same. I've been thinking about starting some seeds. I did start some Rising Moon and Ray Kudronic genetic seeds, um, but definitely going to be planting some sweet peppers this year. Not so many hots. The hots were an issue with the kids last year, and I asked a buddy to send me some peppers, some seeds that were it's like the sweet selection, and he's a hot pepper guy, so they were all freaking hot. But he would call them sweet. So now I'm just gonna go on. Now I've already gone online. I found a place out of Ann Arbor called Nature and Nurture Seeds, that sells like heirloom stuff. So I also buy a lot of starts from Great Lakes Grease. I can't remember his name off the top of my
Andy.
head. Andy, yeah, you know him.
Yep, good
Um,
guy.
yeah, we have a cool kind of close knit, wide-ranging community, widespread community here in Michigan that we see each other 2-3 times a year, which is always fun. So supporting local is always key, and running your own F3 pepper seeds, that's pretty dope. Kev, what's going on over in your garden? We didn't get an update from you.
I planted what I plant Russ or Lesotas, Kennebecs, and I can't remember the other one. Potatoes anyway. So I planted what I planted. I planted about 40 holes. So 40 holes equals hopefully around 40 plants. But if each plant gives me 5 potatoes, it's 200 potatoes I'm gonna get. So that's what I'm shooting for. 150, 200 potatoes. Man, I've dumped out a bunch of washed cannabis flowers. It was a film run. It had film pollen just blown everywhere. A lot of these plants might not have been big enough, or whatever the case may have been. They weren't chosen, but they were cut down and they were frozen and washed. That bud is now in a bunch of my no-till spots. And dude, I showed one no-till spot. There's over 100 little volunteers that have popped up everywhere, man. There's tons of film seeds that have come up. So I'm just kind of watching them. I have no idea what I'll do with them. I don't know if I'll keep any of them or not, but it was just fun seeing cannabis growing again. But that's all I planted really was just the potatoes. I don't know if I'm gonna do onions again this year. I love onions. I eat onions all the time, but I like for some reason I pull well I know I pull my onions early and I never get a big crunchy one. I always like to chop them up in salads and just eat them. I eat them too fast. I never let them get big enough for like a good bite. I'll eat an onion raw, just get into it. So I like buying our local fruit market onions now. Kind of enjoy those. They're called Texas Super Sweets, and they're nice. They're not hot at all. They're juicy. They got a good sweet, light taste to them. Yeah, I love onions and potatoes, man. Those are first things that's going to come up. I'm about to start some of my own sunflowers though. Call them shorty fatheads. They're about a 3 foot to 4 foot plant. They're about as tall as just about to my chin right here. So, but the head on them are monsters. They're big, fat ones. And so I've got probably 200 little F1 seeds that we're going to try to pop a bunch of them again this year and just hunt out another nice fat-headed short sunflower. That's kind of what I'm going for this year.
That's that's freaking sweet. Running genetics and finding, even just finding the strongest volunteers of those plants out in the garden there. I mean, you'll find some ridiculous genetics because those are the ones that have the fight in them. They're scrappy bastards, that are going somewhere, and they're starting early and they're going long. So
Yeah, and it's been freezing a couple of nights they've been up too, so they're all kind of shrugging along like, yeah, bring it, let's do this, I'm ready to grow. I'm gonna keep the best one that pops up. Is another off ends. I'm gonna probably keep the best one, and then I want to plant my own stuff. I gotta get into some new F1s that I've got going on and crack them open for 'em.
it's fun to have fun with it, and it doesn't have to be mundane. Like, it doesn't have to be mundane growing a tomato. Like, grow some shit that's fun. Find what does well in your area, do a little research, and grow something beautiful. And then maybe, it's crazy because there's some vegetables I don't really like, but when I grow them, I love them. And there's just something there, and it's just a good way to broaden your horizons and to kind of keep seeing the beauty in nature. Because some of the stuff that you grow at home, you'll never see that in a supermarket. Some of these peppers and tomatoes and stuff, man, they are
The
just so
taste won't be in that supermarket, that's for sure.
Nope.
not even at the farmers market, because those are the ones that nobody's sharing. They're
Yep.
not for sale. So, um, Brian, what's going on in your world? You got a lot of stuff coming up. A show, or not show, but a class coming up on March 3rd. Is that correct?
Yeah, man. We're going to be teaching more people how to breed kind of what that is known as the designer isopods. We need to build up the life in the bioactive setups the same way we do with living soil systems. And then we're venturing more into the global market with a company called Terrarium Tribe. We're offering a variety of products, starting out kind of small, and then adding as we see fit to kind of what is needed. So behind the scenes, very very tired to be honest, but excited for 2024. And I think a lot of people when they start the new year, they have all these hopes and everything, and it kind of goes away. But lately, I've been able to I don't know, be around my wife and other business partners, and it's just an exciting time. And seeing Mark and Kevin take off this year and last year is exciting. And to be honest, Ross, you guys have kind of been crushing it for years now, so it's not like I don't feel like it's as new as everybody else, but I'm sure in those first like 2 years, like everybody else kind of here, it feels pretty sweet. So I just wanted to kind of maybe share that with you, Ross, is that journey, I think, is also the sweetest aspect. And to see even Kevin, where he's, his first love is gymnastics, second love is plants, and well, I mean, first love obviously family. I don't mean to make it sound like that, but like a
I know
hobby.
what you mean.
Yeah, your hobby, man. As soon as I said that, I was like, I don't. Yeah, a family man always puts other things first, but just understanding that there's hobbies, there's ways to monetize those things. Kevin's been able to do it. Mark is doing it. Ross has been doing it for a minute. And having a group of people, man, to be honest, on a commercial facility, the friction sometimes is usually too much at some point. And so for you guys, whatever you do behind the scenes to make sure that everybody feels respected, everybody's doing what is their percentage of the work and all that. I know that's very hard to manage and maintain. So kudos to you guys for having 4 people that seem like they want to be able to do the work.
Yeah, thanks. It's like, it's all about the journey. It's like we're growing, we're learning, and we're growing, and we're bumping into people, and some people we can learn and grow with, and maybe some we can't, but we still learn from bumping into them. So it's like, we got these short lives, and it is nice when you bump into people that you can work with and you can grow with, because that's what it takes. You're not going to get anywhere on your own. I mean, you'll be somewhere, but the more people you have around you, like-minded, to help you out and help you succeed, and even people to just give you good advice if they're not right there next to you trying to, get their elbows and hands dirty with you. It all helps, having that support network and that community. And I mean, that's huge. That's real growth. I mean, that's what it's all about, the community and the friendships, and just people are doing what they love. And I feel like you're right, Brian. I mean, things aren't always great. There's definitely friction, but when there's a mutual respect and people understand, it's like, I don't have to do what's hard for me. There's somebody else there that's easy for them, and they're good at it, and they can do that. And that allows me to focus on something that I'm good at. And then we're both accomplishing something and doing it very well. And we come back and we're like, hey, look at this. And then, the rest of the team members are doing the same thing. And all of a sudden you've actually got something there, and you're like, wow, that was a couple of months of building, and look where we've gotten now, and look where we can build off of that. It's like, you need those people in that support network, or else, I mean, self-made's not really a thing, right? I don't believe it.
That balance is key. And everybody getting that respect and feeling that wealth is so important, and it's tantamount to the relationship that Kevin, Brian, and I have here in this group. You know, we're not necessarily all like partnered in business in that kind of marriage like you guys are, but totally understanding of the everybody has their lane, everybody has their expertise and knowledge to share here, and everybody is valued and respected, you know, and taking it from everybody, taking a little bit from here, a little bit from here, a little bit from here, as opposed to compartmentalizing yourself into one field of thought is just a lot. It's just a much better way to approach it. So you know that's the goal of this show here is we're trying to, you know, we want to branch out this discussion about biodiverse soil systems, just relating to cannabis, you know, and the next stepping stone is growing your own garden, growing your own vegetables and fruits. And then you branch out further and you have bioactive systems like in reptile enclosures and in hobbyist, you know, isopod vivariums, different applications that these things can be applied to. And, you know, that's where we're trying to build like this parallel conversation. And without that community, without the understanding, and without all of us, our lanes, you know, this would definitely be a much more daunting task because it is kind of in the dark at this point, and it's something that we're on the forefront of. We're trying to develop a way to get all of these people together because we're all celebrating soil. So, quick thesis statement about the show and kind of what the goal is here, and you know, chatting with you, Ross, and knowing how you and your crew are, and the appreciation for, you know, the bounty of the soil is you know, great to have that perspective on the show, and always a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, likewise. It's a privilege and an honor chatting with all of you guys. I mean, you know, Kevin's putting out tons of information on Instagram for a long time. Free gold bars for anybody that wants to learn. There's other great accounts out there doing it too. Mark, Brian. I mean, it does take the whole community. I'm not a mycologist, but if I have a mycologist friend, I can ask a mycology question about my soil bed, and that helps me. I'm not an entomologist, but if I can go to somebody and say, hey, I've got freaking russet mites, you know, unfortunately, what am I going to come at them with? Because I can't burn this building down, you know, like it's nice to be able to have friends and have outlets, and you know, and vice versa. It's nice when people come to you and ask you for advice. I mean, that's validating in itself. And if you can help them, that's great. If not, maybe you can point them on to someone else that you know that can. It's a lot of giving in the community. And if that's what you're doing, is you're out there and you're giving information and you're giving help, you're going to get it. You know, when you need it, you're going to get it. People will remember. So it's definitely a community building thing. We grow cannabis, but like you said, you can start at home with a vegetable garden. That's how you're going to get good at growing. Grow something.
Well, we like to keep this show about an hour. We don't want to take up any more of your Friday night, Ross. But like I said, absolute pleasure speaking with you. Always fun catching up with this group of people on Friday nights. And before we sign off, real quick shout outs. Do you guys want to list off the brands, Kev?
Yeah. Hey, Ross, thank you for talking. I can tell you got a kind, gentle heart. You got a good spirit about you, easy to talk to. Clearly, if you have to work with other people, you have wisdom, because it's not easy. I'm not easy to work with. I can promise you that. You wouldn't want me on my team. I'm too damn bossy, and I think my way's right. So I get it. And if you got a team that you put together and you made it work, kudos, dude. Good job. Keep it up. Proud of you. So yeah, go to okcalix.com. Check out some of the bundles I got up still. It's time to make your IMO3s, y'all. You need to start making some IMO3. In 1 week, you can have some IMO3 made. Get it all over your garden. I got an IMO3 starter pack up at okcalix.com. Go check it out. Thanks for being here, Ross.
Thank you.
You want to shout out the class?
Yeah, the class is in a very classy place in Parker, Colorado. If you're familiar with Parker, you know it's a great little town in the first place. But the main part of the little, it's a very little town, but it has some cool stuff. And so it's called the Pace Center, is where that is at. I rented out the building that has the cool garage door. If you're familiar with the Pace Center, so we're gonna have some fun and learn how to do designer isopods. I'm gonna probably see tweak maybe a class or two, and then I hope to be able to bring everybody that's kind of more involved in this stuff and the brands that are on rubberduckyisopods.com. You know, where our goal is to be able to take that stuff to that reptile world, and to bring OK Calyx on board with this stuff, and when it's time, and just to continue to push the brands. You know, I like helping Mark, and I've had people come up to me and say, you know, like, how come you're pushing all these different brands at the reptile shows? And I told him, I was like, I just think that people are very good at certain things, and so I'm getting pretty good at the isopods. Mark's crushing it with the beneficials. Kevin understands IMO, and to smoke good ganja. I mean, we all want to get good at that. So Ross is at the forefront of that stuff with his team. So I'm learning from everybody, and I think that's the real difference. Is in the early days of cannabis growth, especially with the salt style, that recipe meant everything, or people could just steal it from you, and so nobody wanted to help one another. And so this is a new phase, a new era, in my opinion, when people are willing to grow really high-end cannabis and then share it the way that they do. And all three of you gentlemen are doing that and sharing it. So just happy to be here on Friday nights with you, instead of, you know, some wasting time. Basically, as I get older, I start to see what really matters.
Amen. Well, I appreciate you guys. Big love. Hope you have a productive and positive week. And until next time, talk to you guys later.
Good week, everybody. Thanks.